an alternative would be to use the concept of classes. Classes allow us to group specific elements together where the same styles should be applied. How does this work? Well, in our full week HTML file, we could say that all these paragraphs in here have a specific class. So class is again an attribute, which could be daily goal, for example. If we use this now and add it right here, there, and right there, then we have this class applied multiple times. In contrast to the ID, classes can be used multiple times. And in the full week CSS file, we can now comment out our combinator here. And now refer to the class with the dot. That's how we refer to class names. And refer to our daily goal class in here, which should actually have the same rules applied as we had it before. And if we go back, you see we have now this class also here in our DevTools, and the margin and the color is still applied. So this would be one of the alternatives here. But what if we comment in now this combinator here, by the way? If we do that, save it, what happens? Website is still styled, but which style was applied? Well, the daily goal style was applied here. See it in our DevTools. Because here, specificity comes into play again. The normal element selector is less specific than a combinator would be, because the paragraph selector, for example here, this one would apply to all paragraphs. The main P combinator here only applies to paragraphs which are descendants of the main element, so it's more specific. And the class here is even more specific, because only elements with this specific class have this certain style applied. So as we talked about it, the concept of specificity here again follows common sense. Therefore, it's pretty easy to remember once you get used to it. Still, I want to keep the currently not working combinator here because we could use our classes for something different here. I mentioned that it would be great if we could have something like 2 highlight goals, so very important goals we should achieve. In our full week HTML file, this could, for example, be our second goal here, so to do the exercises, and also this one, the third one, to dive deeper. These could be very important goals because if we practice what we learned, we made sure we understood what we learned, and if we then dive deeper, we can do the next step. For this, we can also use a class, but not being applied to the paragraph, of course, because I want to highlight the entire list item here. So let's delete all our classes right here, this one and that one. And let's now add the class to the specific list items. So again, we can combine or select specific elements which should have a common style. So let's say class should be highlight goal here, for example, and apply the same class here to this list item. Class is highlight goal. Now, what should happen to this highlight goal? Well, at the moment, in our full week CSS file, we have this background color being applied to the list items. And as you just learned, the type selector here is the least specific selector. Therefore, if we now take the background color property and rename daily goal to highlight goal, and also delete these properties in here, and paste the background color, and now hover over it to open this helper here in Visual Studio Code, and let's make this maybe slightly more reddish. It's just a slight change, like this. So we have this 224, 124, and 111 here. If we save this, go back, you see that we now have a slight darker background color for these two goals. Maybe a bit too slight, to be honest, so let's maybe put this a bit more to the right. Like this, so 226, 115, 101. Yeah, now I think it's more evident. Now we have these two goals highlighted a little bit to make sure that these are our core goals. And again, we used another selector here, which is more specific than the type selector here with the list item. Therefore, for the other list items which don't have this specific class applied, our default color, so to say, for the list items is applied. But with the more specific class selector, we added a background color to the elements which have this selector applied. With that, we improved our styles a lot. What I still don't like here is the gap between our header and the main part here. So we should add a bit more margin to make sure this increases. For this, in our full week CSS file on top maybe, we can use the header type selector here and also add margin bottom, a bit more here of 64 pixels. Let's see. Yeah, I think now this looks a lot better. And what we could also do is, well, we could go with the ID selector here maybe for the description of our challenge. As I said, both alternatives are possible here, but as we want to practice as many selectors and combinators as possible, we'll go for the ID selector here, for the descendant combinator there, and at the bottom we'll go with the class selector. With this, we're coming closer towards the end of this diving deeper module. There is just one last core concept missing we should have a look at.